Hi, everybody. Welcome to the latest episode of the Real Talk with Rick podcast. I'm happy to say after doing a few different COVID-only episodes that our City Hall has reopened, and in a socially distant manner, we want to get the podcast up and running again with different guests. And so we're doing that in this episode with our longtime city attorney, Eden Prairie City Attorney Rick Rosow. In some form or another, Rick Rosow practiced law for the city of Eden Prairie, for the city council and the city from the late 70s all the way until the end of 2019 when he retired. He still provides some counsel for the firm and the group that works with the city, but Rick has a long established career here in Eden Prairie, so I sat down and talked to him a little bit about his path to law school and to municipal law, some of his memories, highlights of his time in Eden Prairie, and what he's doing now in retirement. So here is my conversation with Rick Rosow. Rick Rosow, without a K at the end of your first name, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, it's good. I haven't seen you in a while.
No, it's been since the end of December. It
is when you, well, I'll call it retired. I mean, you retired from Eden Prairie. I know you still do a little bit of work as a city. Well, you were the city attorney for a number of years. We'll talk about how long. Yeah, I like to have fun with how long it's been. But also, I know you're still providing some advice behind the scenes, but Maggie, our new official city attorney, is more the go-between between the city and yourself. But, yeah, it's good to see you. Like you said, it's been about 6 months.
Right.
Yeah.
And, when you leave a place, you often think about all the relationships you have with people and want to see them again. And then COVID happened, and that put a kibosh to even just a drop in. So
yeah, that's true. I said before we started recording that the building here was closed for just short of 3 months, and we're open now. We've been open for a couple weeks, and we did a couple podcasts, 3 of them I think, in kind of April and early May related to COVID. With people that were here, fire chief and economic development manager. But yeah, it's good that you can come back in. It's good that you can visit. We're happy to see you. Doing the podcast is not an excuse just to get you in here, but I knew it would bring you in here.
Sure.
Yeah, and you look like you've only aged a few months, not 6 months. So you look pretty good.
Thank you.
Yeah. So you were the Eden Prairie city attorney for how long?
I became the city attorney in 2001. So 2001 through the end of 2019. But prior to that, starting in 1978, when Roger Pauly was appointed city attorney, I joined the firm just 2 months after that. And so from July of 1978 through the end of my career, I did work for Eden Prairie, was as an assistant city attorney and then the city attorney.
Yeah, I think maybe people don't have the full, because some cities are different. You work for a law firm that the city contracts with. You're not a city employee. You're a contracted employee. In some cities, the city attorney or the city attorney's office might be an office within City Hall. Your office, at least as long as I've known you, was downtown. You have multiple attorneys at the firm, some of which worked in other cities, and that's the case with a lot of similar communities. I think Bloomington and Minnetonka are 2 neighboring exceptions that have what we'll call in-house staff city attorneys, but in the case of many other suburbs, we will contract with a firm, and then you could bring anything from prosecution, which you do for the police department, but also litigation work and employment work, civil work, land use, and all those different areas. So you're saying that from 78 or so all the way to 2001, you would work on Eden Prairie. You would work with Eden Prairie, but maybe also in other cities as well.
Yes. I mean, Roger Pauly was really good to work with in that respect. He literally had areas that he always looked to me to handle. And a lot of engineering issues in the early years. We were acquiring lots of easements and roadways, the ring road, all of those projects. And then also with finance, working with John Frayne, the city clerk at the time, and working on bond issues, not as bond attorney, but as the city attorney to assist the city on those. So, the movement from assistant to the city attorney was pretty seamless because the city was used to seeing me around here at City Hall or on the phone a lot. And then as Roger got nearer to retirement, he started taking off 2-3 months during the winters to get away, and then I would be here for those 3 months in his shoes at the council meetings, so the council got to know me as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll come all the way back to that then and talk about some example stories I want you to share about your experience as city attorney. That's why you're here. But taking a step back, I like to do that with everyone we talk to. Where are you from? Where'd you grow up?
I was born in Brookfield, Illinois, actually in Chicago, but we moved to Brookfield right after that and was there until fourth grade. My father was in the furniture business and got a job in Minneapolis managing a showroom on what was Highway 12, just before you entered downtown, just before Penn Avenue.
Okay.
Coming from the west. It's not there anymore, but it was owned by the Dayton Corporation at the time. So he came up to Minnesota to manage that showroom, and we moved up here in 1956 and lived in Golden Valley from that point on until I went to college and was out on my own.
Would the store have been in Golden Valley then, kind of near, when you say Penn Avenue into downtown?
No,
like
it was on 390, Highway 12, which is now 394.
Okay.
Just before you get to Penn, there's buildings on the right-hand side, and this particular building has been taken down, and there's some newer buildings there.
Would we know the name of the furniture store?
Likely not. Midwest Furniture.
Okay.
So it was a showroom set up for designers and other smaller showrooms, other smaller furniture stores to bring their clients to see a wider array of more upscale furniture.
Okay. So did you go to Golden Valley High School?
No, I went to Benilde High School.
Oh, sure. So, I did know that. That's right.
Yes.
Yeah, Highway 100.
Right. So grade school in Golden Valley at a Catholic grade school, St. Margaret Mary.
Yeah.
And then Benilde High School. For high school.
And then, so what leads to interest in law? Where'd you go to college and then law school?
Well, first I went to Loras College for a semester in Dubuque, Iowa. I thought I wanted to be a priest.
Did you say, okay, so it's a seminary?
Loras was not a seminary, but the Dominicans had a seminary there.
Okay.
And the first 2 years of college, they had one dorm reserved for people, young college men who wanted to be a Dominican. And
Sure.
you lived in that dorm, and it was like being in a seminary. And I was told it was also to be a regular college experience. Give you 2 years of regular college experience, mature, and then you go into the novitiate. And after about 6 weeks, I discovered it really wasn't 2 years of regular college, which is what I really wanted.
Yeah.
And there were things, simple things. You couldn't date. And I thought, well,
that's an issue.
What's regular college without dating?
Yeah.
And you got up at 6 in the morning and said prayers for about half an hour every day. That was okay. I mean, if you were going to be a priest, that was fine.
Yeah.
But so I moved out of that hall after about 6 weeks and spent the rest of the semester there, and then transferred to St. Thomas for the next year and a half, and then decided I wanted to pay my own way rather than have my parents paying for that tuition, and so transferred to the university where I graduated with my BA in psychology. So at that point, back to your question, law wasn't on the radar at that point.
When did it get on the radar?
Well, I taught for 2 years,
okay,
and actually taught back at Benilde for 2 years, and then moved on to a...
What did you teach?
I taught religion, social studies, and I was a counselor the second year.
To what age students?
Freshmen, sophomores, and juniors.
Okay.
I don't think I had any senior classes.
Okay. Well, I mean, we'll get to this later. And I forgot, I made a note of this just now, that you were actually on a school board as well. You're a school board member.
Right.
So that's a good connection, because you could say you were actually had been a teacher. Okay, so you're teaching at Benilde.
Right.
Pretty much soon after getting the psychology degree?
Yes.
Okay.
And I went to St. Thomas at the same time to get my education degree. Didn't need it to be teaching in a private school, but they wanted me to get it, so I got the master's in education. And then I moved on to become the director of a youth service bureau out in the Mounds View, Arden Hills, Roseville area.
Okay.
And it was, I didn't know about joint powers agreements back then. And it was a joint powers entity that they had formed to have a youth service bureau. And they had this old farmhouse out in the middle of a field. And I was its sole employee and its director. And so I was to be interfacing with kids, have it open in the evenings, be a place where kids could come, hang out, and if they had things they needed to talk about, etc. And so that was going along really well until towards the end of the first year, one of the cities decided they did not want to be a member anymore. The center was too far from where they were. So they decided to pull out of the joint powers, and that would have been the end of the organization. So I actually continued to work with them through the end of the year in order to find another home for the organization. And I approached the school district, met with the superintendent and their business manager, and literally convinced them that this was a good program and that the schools should take it over. And they were somewhat skeptical, and I could tell during the interview, or it wasn't really an interview, it was just a meeting that I had arranged, that they were concerned that I came with the program, that this was I would be the guy. And finally I just looked at the superintendent and said, that is not what this is about. You make a decision. The program is a good program. The kids can use the program. Make a decision later about who you hire. It does not need to be me. And so they did that, and then they asked me to continue to be the director.
Okay.
And I did that, then serving out the whole year. But that got me thinking about law.
What year was that? When was it?
That would have been in 1972.
Okay.
Yes, because I started law school in the end of 73. So 72 through 73, that time frame.
So you were in college pretty much through the late 60s.
Graduated in 69. Right.
Okay.
Yes. So, I reflected on all that after saving the organization, in essence, getting it a home, and continuing to serve kids out of the school district, which was a different setup. I decided I didn't want to be employed where my future was decided by political concerns or staffing concerns or whatever. I wanted to have the ability to take my skills wherever I went, and that got me thinking about law.
Okay.
And so I applied to law school. Now, my wife has a little different story.
Oh, okay. So she's got the correct story.
I don't know if it's the
real
correct story.
Another story.
Yeah.
And two people can look at the same thing and see two different things, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So if you'd ask her, she'd tell you she always wanted to marry an attorney.
Oh.
And when she didn't get one, she made sure he became an attorney.
He became one. I like that. That's a good story. I could see Vicky telling.
So
I could see Vicky saying that.
I actually asked her about that today.
Yeah.
I said, I'm going to say this.
Yeah.
Do you have a problem with that? And she said, no, but she said, I never told you I wanted to marry an attorney. And I said, well, where did that all come from? She said, when my father came back from the war, well, before that, when her Father was 16. He graduated from high school. Was very, very smart guy. But then his father died, and he wanted to be an attorney. He was planning on going to college, becoming an attorney. When his father died, he had to take over the family farm. Didn't make it to college. World War II happened, fought in the Aleutian Islands, came back, and probably because of the hardships there, died at a very young age of 36. So she said it was just this idea that my father wanted to do that.
Yeah. So, following your wife's advice, you became interested in law, went to law school. What happened then? Where'd you go?
I went to the University of North Dakota for law school. Was accepted at Mitchell, was on the waiting list at Minnesota. At Mitchell, I would have been working full-time, actually. I had gotten a job with Hennepin County as a probation officer. Was offered the job and told them about the hours at school and how did that fit. And they said, will work out just fine. You get off at 3:30. You could get over to Mitchell at 4 o'clock and go to classes. And so the offer was there, and I thought about that, and I thought, that's nuts. How do you do that?
Yeah.
And so I accepted the offer from the University of North Dakota to go to school full-time.
Full-time. Okay. Then what brought you back here, working here?
This was home.
Yeah.
And we had never planned to stay in North Dakota, but we didn't come right back. We moved to Michigan in Ann Arbor because Vicki got accepted at the University of Michigan in their social work school.
Wow, it's a great city, great school.
Yes, yeah. The social work school was one of the top in the nation. And so she got accepted there.
Is North Dakota, is it Fargo? Is that where the law school was? Grand Forks.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd rather be in Ann Arbor.
Yeah, well, I have...
No, I'm not slamming Grand Forks.
No.
Yeah, I am.
Well, and so we moved there, and then I started looking for a job in downtown Detroit, and got a job in downtown Detroit with a small law firm, and worked there until...
this is interesting. Mid-70s? Mid to late 70s?
So we moved there in 76. So I worked at that law firm and got the job in 77. And then we came home in middle of 78. So I worked with them for a year and a half.
I say interesting because automobiles, Detroit, the late 70s, kind of the beginning of the end, for that period of time for the automotive gas-guzzling car industry.
Yes, and for Detroit was suffering as well.
Yeah.
So I tell the story that when we had the fire downtown in Donaldson's and Northwestern Bank burned down, it got rebuilt. We don't have a Donaldson's, but we've got a brand new, what is now the Wells Fargo building, and a vibrant downtown. They had a similar kind of two department stores. They had Marshall Field's, which Dayton's became,
right.
And then they had Crowley's, which was the comparison to Donaldson's. Crowley's was an empty shell, and the county took it over as a jail. So it wasn't a thriving downtown.
No, I mean, late 70s into the 80s, Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Detroit, New York, to some extent. I mean, just not a good time for large urban cities.
Right. But it was a great firm, Travis, Warren, Nair, and Burgoyne. And I got aligned. I did work.
What is it? Is that a joker? What was that, Travis?
Travis, Warren, Nair, and Burgoyne.
Okay.
I never met Nair.
I like how that rolls off the tongue. I like that.
And, it was my first professional job as an attorney, and it was fun. One of the partners, Burgoyne, did totally condemnation work, and he did that on behalf of cities and municipalities and counties. So I started working with him on those cases, and that's where I did my first legal work for a municipality, the charter. It was a charter township,
okay,
and did work for them.
But just the idea, you're in Michigan. Vicky's school brought you there. You get a job at a firm, and that firm just so happens to practice municipal law, and that's boom, you're right into it there.
Right. And so that helped me get the job here because
Okay.
they were looking for someone who had municipal experience to help Roger once he was appointed city attorney. But Vicky had gotten a job offer to come back. A friend of ours tried to lure her and me back by offering her a job. He was running the Johnson Institute at the time and wanted to hire her there. And we started talking about that, and we had an 8-month-old who was at that time had been born in North Dakota, started thinking about family and cousins and those kinds of relationships. And so once she got that offer, then she reached out to her former employer to see if they were interested in her, and they were. And so we made the decision to move back to Minneapolis.
Actually found a house in Minnetonka?
In Edina.
In Edina okay.
Yeah. We were looking in South Minneapolis.
Yeah.
And the realtor took us, you know how I feel about realtors.
Yes, I do.
She did a great job. She took us on the other side. We were at 50th and France.
Uh-huh.
She took us into that area of Edina, the older portion of Edina, and to a house that was owned by Neil Armstrong, the football assistant coach of the Vikings.
Oh, sure. Became head coach of the Bears.
He had just been appointed head coach of the Bears, so I never met him.
Okay, I didn't know that.
So when we drove by the house before we did the showing, just to see what the neighborhood was like, and we were driving a 1966 Chevelle that had 16. This is in 1978, and it had 12,000 miles on it before I drove back from Detroit, because it was owned by the old couple who lived above the pharmacy and never drove it anywhere.
Yeah.
It had holes in the front seat on the floorboard.
Yes.
And there was caulking around all the windows so that rain wouldn't come in.
Yeah. That seems like every Chevelle I've been in.
Yeah.
I mean, I was in Chevelles in the late 80s that were models from the late 70s and early 80s, and they had holes in the floor and
had a V8.
Yeah.
It was fast.
Yeah.
But so we parked a couple blocks away because we figured if we parked in front of the house, they would figure we could not afford it.
Yeah. Hide the car.
Hide the car. Yeah.
I had no idea that Neil Armstrong coached the Vikings. I didn't even know that. I mean,
as an assistant.
Yeah, I had no idea. Yeah. I mean, I remember him coaching the Bears, but you bought his house. And then, so now we're getting up into your time here as city attorney, because as you said, you start working with Roger Pauly and doing some work. What other cities were you working in the late 70s? Do you remember?
Eden Prairie was the only city we had at the time. So
we gave you guys your big shot?
You absolutely did.
Yes.
Nice. You know what I've always said, you brought us to the dance.
Yeah.
And
we always say we're your favorite client, and but I didn't know we were the first one. Well, good job, the city leaders at that time, giving you guys a shot.
Yes.
You've only made a few mistakes, but I mean, for the most part, it's been very fruitful.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I started to try to branch out by interviewing as openings came, and I think in 1986 I acquired Delano and became the Delano city attorney, and before that had interviewed out in White Bear and with the city council at White Bear and White Bear Lake. And when I came back, I told Roger about the interview. I said, well, it was me, and it was Dorsey and Whitney, and it was attorneys from Briggs and Morgan. He looked at me, and I was still a pretty young attorney. He said, well, maybe I should have gone there with you. And I said, well, it probably would have helped, but, we didn't get the job. But, we were saving me for this, for better things.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah. No, what, look, kind of that time spent here in Eden Prairie, what are some of your favorite memories, some of your favorite accomplishments?
A lot of the work that I did revolved around two of the Flying Clouds, the Flying Cloud Airport and the Flying Cloud landfill. So the landfill was had to be one of the biggest things that I ever took on as an attorney. It went on for 8 years, the battle to expand the footprint of the landfill to more than double its size, and the city council was very much against that. And so Roger essentially turned over that work to me, and it involved, administrative hearings. It involved presentations before the Met Council, before the Minnesota Pollution Control Agencies. We filed lawsuits against both of them in terms of the issuance of an expansion permit to delay that or to stop it, to give them good reasons why they shouldn't be doing it. And then ultimately we opposed the issue of the permit in an administrative hearing, which is similar to a trial before a judge, except it's an administrative hearing judge. And that went on for 2 years of time, not continuous, but over a 2-year period of time, 22 weeks of trial, 3 months of mediation, and those kinds of things. So I look back on that, and because it had a positive outcome for the city, it really taught me a lot about lawyering and about following through with ideas and bringing them into reality. And there was lots of fun times.
Yeah. Well, I mean, didn't you show me the picture of you drinking champagne at City Hall after the victory for the city with the landfill?
Yes. Except it was non-alcoholic. Yeah. Right.
He did. He had to go out of his way to tell me that there wasn't alcohol in that cup. I'm like, it's fine. I mean, I don't know what time of day the picture was taken, but I think it was like one of the Eden Prairie News kind of blast from the past, and there you were,
right?
Bottle of champagne. No, that was people still talk quite a bit about the landfill. Obviously, we have a closed landfill in Eden Prairie, and it's not operating, and it's been covered a few times and mitigated, but at the time it was a landfill that was operating and considered for expansion, so that was a big deal.
Yeah. And probably the culmination of all of it was when a whistleblower inside the organization of the landfill, after a vice president died, he went to their attorneys and said, we have documents that have been requested by the city's attorneys or attorney.
You pretended that there were many of you lined
up,
but it was really just you.
They had an army of attorneys.
Rick and Associates.
They had an army of attorneys.
Right.
The city had me.
Yeah.
And he said...
David versus Goliath.
And they said he deep-sixed him. He kept him in his drawer and never showed him.
Really? I think you did tell me that.
So that got turned over to us, and by that time the city had hired 2 public relation firms, Democratic and Republican, to assist with our story, and they set up a press conference in front of the MPCA. We had the document that was the smoking gun put on a big board, and they set it up, and they said, you just tell us what you told us before about what this means, in front of all the TV cameras. And it was great fun. I mean, and when I pointed to the smoking gun and said, here it is, I could see all the cameras move that way and pull in on it.
So, in an era not of email and the internet, did this person call someone at the city and said, I'll deliver the documents to City Hall? How did that end up happening?
Well, because we had requested it in a document request,
Yeah.
the whistleblower told their attorneys at the law firm representing the garbage company.
Okay.
That attorney sent it to us, as was his ethical duty. And I mean, he was my opponent, and we knocked heads a lot, and he made it to the Supreme Court. He was a good attorney, and an ethical one, and so they turned it over to us. So we took that and made a big deal out of it, and that's when the landfill company threw in the towel. They withdrew their application.
Yeah, no, I remember that was a big story. And then, the other thing I think about too, for probably both you and Roger is, throughout the 80s and 90s and 2000s, all the growth and development in Eden Prairie. So, all the 4 to 6 hour council meetings continually dealing with new land use development.
Yes.
And I've had on, former mayor and council members and others that were kind of here throughout that growth time frame, but you were here through a lot of that as well. The town center area, the mall, Highway 212, just a lot of the development occurring, and even through the redevelopment. I mean, that's what I'd say the last 5 years and the next 20 years are about what gets torn down and rebuilt. Yes. That's redeveloped, that's new, because they're mainly built out. But you had a hand in a lot of that too.
I did. Roger had me dealing with a lot of the issues, and then, of course, when I became city attorney in 2001, I was, dealing with them all. But it's always been fun to drive out here and to see the projects that I worked on. And my kids probably got tired of it. I helped with that building, or I helped with that building. I had a role to play with respect to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yes, Vicki would say when we first came out here to go to Roger's house for a law firm party the first year I was there, it was just farmland. Mm-hmm. And the Flying Red Horse was the only landmark in the area.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely. Anything else you want to share that sticks out in your time here?
A lot of the housing issues that I worked on later were not of the high profile in terms of the public, but they brought a lot of satisfaction to me professionally, because it involved two things. One, it involved problem solving. Your community development director, Janet, would say, this is what I want to do. And then I would first lay out, well, here's all the hurdles that we have to get by.
You're good at that.
And then she would say, okay, get us over those hurdles.
Yeah.
And so I enjoyed being able to create the format or the box to enable us to achieve what, and I say we, because I bought into everything that was going on, to achieve what the city wanted to achieve. So those kinds of projects were great in terms of challenging me to problem solve, not just tell you what the law was, but to find a way to achieve what you wanted to achieve within the law. And then the other thing about them is that it was for such a good public cause and purpose to provide in almost all of those projects an aspect of affordable housing.
And that's a good segue into, I think, your last meeting where we recognized you, we proclaimed that day in December being your day for your last meeting, was the same meeting that you started affordable housing. I mean, I won't call it trust fund. I actually might eventually have a trust fund, but to make a donation and to urge others to provide funds for affordable housing in our community. So we keep moving in that direction. So I knew that was a passion of yours.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, you worked on commercial, all housing projects, single family, multiple family, but there are also a lot of affordable housing developments that are really coming to fruition now and have been here for a while that you've played a part in.
Yes,
that is a passion of yours.
And Vicki and I, through our church, had worked on some affordable housing initiatives. Pardon me, through our church. So that was important to us.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So what retirement? So it's been about. It's not a full retirement. We understand that, but what's been the biggest surprise to you in these last 6 months? Yeah, I like the giggle, the laugh. Do you miss reading the indemnification clauses?
Not at all.
Okay, all right.
24/7 with my wife.
Yeah.
Since the pandemic was not something either of us anticipated.
Yeah.
So
how's she handling that?
She's handling it really well.
Okay, good. Good. I'll send her a card.
The first month we went on vacation, so we were gone relatively soon after the first of the year for a month on vacation in a warm weather climate and together all the time. But as soon as we got back, she went to her studio every day, and I was home, and I had things that I was working on, my photography, as well as getting ready for a retirement celebration, etc. And then all of a sudden COVID hits, and it's 24/7. We're doing everything together.
Everything together without anybody else around, right?
Until recently, yes.
Yeah, I mean for a while. So you know what? You and I shared an email about your retirement party because at a staff event, we played a trivia game about your life and asked other staff members to answer questions about your life that I knew the answer to that you and I worked on. Is that what you wanted to use at your retirement party? Did that party occur then?
Yes, just before.
Just before, okay.
COVID.
Good.
And so, yes, I put out a version of those questions for people to use the materials that I had set out around the room, the photo albums and scrapbooks to figure out some of the answers to those questions, and then offered the person who got the most right choice of one of my photographs as a prize.
Oh, that's neat. Yeah, I mean, because some of what we had fun with, had to do with who was president of the United States when Rick Rosow started practicing law, and you had people that were putting down. FDR had quite a few different terms as president. So was that FDR or Lyndon Johnson? We brought up, but we knew that it was Gerald Ford. But also, and what was the first musical that? Was it your first date with your wife? Was what musical?
Yes.
And I think that was a great question because if you kind of place it in the era that it was in, it was either Hair or Jesus Christ Superstar? Hair, yes. Sierra, it's been like 3 years since we did that. So, yeah, I thought that was a pretty good game. Now, photography, travel is something that you did, when you had a chance to. When you were our attorney. In fact, we've joked about, I think, standing on some mountain somewhere and calling me about how we're going to wrap up the deal for Shields, or maybe you were in Machu Picchu when you were checking in on a council packet or something. But that has been something you've been doing for a long, long time. Hopefully, again, COVID, that makes it more difficult, right?
Yes.
That you have plans for more travel?
We hope.
Yeah.
We had to cancel our summer plans. We were going to go to Botswana on a safari, and our son and daughter-in-law and 2 grandsons were going to accompany us. And so we've canceled that one, and actually tomorrow we're going to Annandale for a week.
Annandale, Minnesota?
Yes.
Okay. So Annandale probably won't be in your top 10 favorite places in the world that you visited, but what would be one or two of the highlights of your favorite places that you visited?
Tibet would be the number one favorite place. We went there twice, spent close to 3 weeks the first time and almost a month the second time, and did not go on a tour group visit. We were connected with a woman that Vicki had met who was a botanical artist who wanted to take groups to Tibet to have them paint the flowers that were on the Tibetan plateau because it was drying out, and she wanted to have a preservation of what the flowers were like, just like the explorers who came over in the ships. They always had a botanist with them who would draw the plants, and so she wanted to preserve that. And Vicki had met her taking some classes, and so Vicki said right away, I want to go, and I thought I better go with her. Tibet's a long way off. And so we signed up, and the trip got canceled because China wouldn't let people into China, because China controls Tibet now, during the Olympics in 2008. So we said, keep our money, we'll go in 2009. In 2009, we were the only two who were still interested, and she called us and said, why don't you go in one of the other groups, because this group has only you. And Vicki explained how we couldn't go in the other groups. One was all women. It was just 4 women, and the other was when our grandson was due to be born. So Diane said, you two were probably meant to go on this trip. I will just take the 2 of you. And we went and had an absolute unbelievable time. I got to spend time in a monastery in a private rooms with monks who had been persecuted. A monk brought out pictures of all the monks from that monastery who were in jail for holding up a sign, "Long live the Dalai Lama," or doing something like that. Mm-hmm. And they were like school pictures, and he started cutting them to give them to Diane so she could give them to the Dalai Lama, because she had a place in Dharamsala, India, and knew the Dalai Lama.
Wow.
And I didn't speak the language, but I just said, no, don't do that to your pictures. I will take pictures of your pictures. And I did that, and we got those out of the country. I've been since told by someone who told me he was a member of the State Department, but I've since learned was in the CIA, that would have gotten me thrown in jail. Wow. That would have been viewed very poorly had they found those photos on my self. Stayed overnight in a nunnery in the mountains up about 13,000 feet, where they gave us a spread of food that was probably more than they ate in a month. And wow. when we left, Vicki asked them, during our kind of closing meeting, is there something we can do for you? What do you need? And she was thinking they might ask for money for clothing, because they shared winter coats and shoes at 13,000 feet in the Himalayas. And so one day someone would have a coat and someone wouldn't, and shoes. And that wasn't at all. They wanted to learn to speak English. And so Vicki said, we can do that. And so we came back, started a nonprofit, Companions in Compassion. Both took English as a second language instruction, and then went back in 2011 to do that, as well as bring computers to them, iPads, clothing for all the children in the village, all from the funds that we had raised through the nonprofit. So that Tibet has to be the highlight. The highlight.
All right, yeah, I really hope that things settle down a little bit and you're able to get to Botswana or where else you're thinking about going. But you've got the photography.
Yes.
You've got you still consult a little bit with your with the law firm. As I said, there's a few documents I've seen that just feel like your writing is somewhere in there still, or your spirit is still in what I'm reading. So
I get calls and I get sent some documents and I make comments
good.
And
you do
give advice.
You do give advice,
but it's all in the hands of the person who's carrying the water now.
Oh yeah, no, she's doing a great job. It's an interesting environment for all of us. Last night was our first in-person meeting since early mid-March for the city council. So we're hopefully slowly opening up and getting back to normal. And I know you also live in downtown Minneapolis as well. So that's been area of unrest for a period of time. You sent me some pictures
Yes.
of that area, which what I was seeing on TV, plays out in what was in those pictures. But, I mean, those pictures were kind of bird's eye view, looking down from, close to where you live. It's just amazing.
Yes, it was tense times.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. But what else are you looking forward to doing in the next 3 to 5 years? Anything else on your plate?
we hope to be able to do some more travel. And I'm trying to take my photography to a different level and sell it.
Is that the different level?
Yes.
Okay.
That's the different
All right.
level.
Okay. I don't know if that meant new lenses or I don't know what the level meant. Sell it.
Sell it.
Sell
And
it.
So it's real easy to take a picture and do a couple edits to it and post it on Facebook, and people say, wow, that looks great. Somebody says they want to buy it. You've got to do a whole lot more work to the photo so that when it gets blown up, it looks as good as it looked as a tiny image on a computer screen.
Yeah.
And so that's what I mean by bring it to the other level. So last week I sold 2 photographs. One was 72 by 30 inches, and another was of the river.
Okay.
And it was a picture I had taken from our condo. And one of the residents in our condo lives in the portion of the building that is now up against the river. We have moved out of the place I took the picture in. And a new building is going up right in front of them.
Okay.
I mean, like right in front of them.
Okay.
And they will lose that view. So he saw my picture and wanted to have it in his living room so he could have the picture of the view he will never...
That he's going to lose.
Of the view that he bought.
The view that he bought.
Right.
Wow. I told you before we started recording that I've been to Art-A-Whirl, and hopefully, who knows, if it would have occurred this year, I may have bought in one of your photographs. If it was priced reasonably.
Right.
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 Yeah.
So, yeah. And another client actually commissioned a picture of the Stone Arch Bridge in downtown, which is very difficult to take because there's not a good place to get both the bridge and downtown in the same picture. You literally need to hike down the steep slope to the foot of the river, walk under the bridge in the water, and get across further down to get both into a picture.
Yeah, that is fascinating because I've seen a lot of photos of the Stone Arch Bridge, and the downtown is not part of the background. It's almost like you're facing north or east.
Yeah.
Johnny, our producer here,
Yes.
He proposed to his now wife on the Stone Arch Bridge.
Very
Right?
good.
You didn't think I remember that, didn't you? I remember that. That's right.
There are lots of wedding couples going to their wedding walking across the Stone Arch Bridge.
Yeah, his wedding wasn't there, but it's where he
Yeah.
proposed. Then went to, was it a Guns N' Roses concert?
Yeah.
Yes! Yes! Yes, I know my producer. Rick, any final parting thoughts before we let you go, and thank you for being on the podcast?
Well, thank you for having me. It's been fun to reminisce about my time here. And you always said that Eden Prairie was my favorite client. And that is what I have said as well.
Yeah.
And always felt a very strong connection to the city, and in particular to the staff and the people I worked here with. And it was a great place to serve out my career, to serve as my career, not serve out my career. It wasn't a sentence. It was a wonderful time. And I appreciate all of what I received here in terms of personal as well as professional compliments.
Yeah, no, it was the 9 years I worked with you, it was a pleasure. And I'm sure the council is, our city council is the group that hires and contracts with the city attorney. That's their choice. But you were a part of our team, so management team as well as the city council team. So we appreciate that. And then, my hope too, it's great to see you again, was to be able to get you in here for a non-billable hour. So I'm happy I was able to do that.
You think this is non-billable?
I do.
Oh.
I do.
Well, you don't know that I'm a guy who plays practical jokes on people, do you?
I do know you. You know that I do know you're a guy that plays practical jokes. I know you do. And you know
so
that
you won't be surprised if you get a bill then.
Right. Ha ha, look at that invoice. Let's put it in the recycling bin.
Okay.
No, yes, I do know you like to have fun as well as I do. But no, thanks for coming on. It was great having you.
Thank you.
Yeah.